Welcome to Live Unashamed, where we pause the show and invite members of our team to talk vulnerably about their own recovery, things they're learning, the resources that are actually working, and what it truly means to live unashamed.
Chris, what's up, homie?
Liam, how's it going, guys?
Welcome to Living Unashamed, man.
Live Unashamed. So, Liam, dude, I'm glad you're here because
He's not glad I'm here. I'm just showing up.
well, I'm Chris. I'm happy you're here, and I'm happy to be here.
Okay, let's paint this into context a little bit because they're not going to understand that. I was harassing Chris because we're going to talk about dating unashamed, but Chris is kind of an old fart. He's been out of
These
the
homies
date.
are making me feel old.
When's the last time you went on a date, Chris?
I date my wife every week.
Okay, well,
Every week.
That's actually the right answer. That's the right answer. But pre-marriage to someone that you were not committed to.
Over 28 years ago.
It has been. I'm not even
No,
28.
I got
Chris.
married when I was 19, so.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Wow, man.
So, dating unashamed, guys. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that there's a lot to unpack there because
I don't know. It's been a struggle for me. I mean, it's been different since I kind of opened up and told my story. It's like a lot of people in my ward know, a lot of girls in my ward know, you know, like at church. And so it's kind of like, well, I kind of have to open up about it. But, you know, it's complex because you never know, like, how do I approach this topic and when's the right time to share that I'm struggling with an addiction to pornography or sexual addiction or whatever it looks like for you. And I've tried different things with different girlfriends, but I don't know. What do you think, Liam?
I've had an interesting experience up until this point. I kind of my policy has always been, and this is just individual. My policy has been when we know that we're going to start dating exclusively, I tell them before that at some point. And
Oh, I thought
Wouldn't
this
that
was
be
first date material, being like, hey, we're going on a date, and I'm going to tell you
Like,
about my
we're gonna go on a-
addiction and all the things.
we're going to go on a date to an ARP meeting is what we're going to do.
Guys,
No,
do not,
not
do
you-
that. It is not first date material.
Yeah, please. Yeah, do not just be yourself.
I know that,
be
and
normal.
I haven't dated for over 28 years.
I had this guy in church one time. He was like, yeah, back in the day, like I told all the young women at church that they need to ask they need to ask on the first date whether the boy they're dating has an addiction to pornography. And I was like,
whoa. Not unless she's willing to open up about all her stuff, right? I mean, that's the
true
problem.
doctrine.
I don't think that there's a relationship where you can be that vulnerable and it can be safe enough to even address that.
Well, and I would imagine because, I mean, if you look at statistics of women that are looking at pornography too, maybe they're like looking at it too going, you know what? Yeah, this is not a first date kind of thing.
Of course.
Because I'm not ready to share that.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with it too.
Do you know
you
what
know,
the
and
current
I don't-
statistics are, Chris?
I could be totally wrong, but about 60% is what I've heard.
Okay.
And we can look it up. You can go look at, there are all sorts of statistics on fightthenewdrug.org.
Yeah.
And you can find
Right.
all sorts of stuff there.
They
But,
do great research.
but I'm pretty sure it's pretty close to 60%.
yeah. And then
wow,
up
I
to,
didn't
like,
know that it was that high
Yeah.
among women.
and that would
Wow.
be history of porn use, not
What-
just.
What do you mean history? of
Because
porn?
I know that like the current statistic for men is like 90% of men have a history of porn use. That's one
Oh,
study
yes,
that I
yes.
read.
Yes.
That 60% would be history of porn use, right? So
Yes.
maybe not actively using, but they've had an issue with it at some point. Is that
Yeah.
what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just
Mm.
don't think that. I don't know why I have to laugh about it because that's so funny to me.
that
you
homie
that-
like lives in shame.
yeah, I don't know. I
Like,
don't.
He teaches everybody about shame, right?
Yeah, that's so unhelpful to both parties.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in the same boat as Liam, where I've tried it a couple different ways. This first girl I dated in the last 5 years, I say like post missions. It's like, oh, for my mission, my first girlfriend. I told her before we started dating, and that was I think that worked okay.
Well, because that I think there's a different context there, right?
Yeah.
You're talking to a friend, not as, hey, we're gonna go on our first date and I'm gonna share all this crap about me.
Yeah.
Right. You were in a friendship long before you start dating on that.
Yeah. And once you're in the context of a committed relationship, there's things that you need to be able to understand and rely on, in context of the other person. I think you're at that point where it's probably important that they know. The other time, and I prefer that method now. The second girlfriend I had since my mission, I told her like a couple days after we started dating, and I wish I would have done it beforehand. But I don't know. I don't know what you guys think about this, because someone that we just recorded on a recent episode was saying, he said to have that conversation once you get to the point where you're about to be engaged.
Totally disagree.
Wow.
So tell me about that. Why you
Totally.
disagree? Because I disagree with him too, and I was surprised he said it.
So just so I understand, she's saying, waiting almost until you're engaged.
Yeah, like
To broach the
you're
subject.
probably to the point where you're like, I know
I'm gonna
getting married to this
propose.
chick.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that felt way
And
too
she's
late
probably
for
let her
me.
know.
I would disagree. I disagree with that. I think you need to talk about it way earlier than that. But Chris, tell us, what do you
What do you
So
think, Chris?
I totally disagree, because there's so many more emotions that are involved there, and I think it's being totally dishonest at that point, because they're thinking that they're with someone that is being totally open and honest about things, and you're totally not. Especially like if you're dating for, say you're dating for 6 months, and then you're like, oh, you know what? I think I want to marry her, and then you're like, hey, by the way, I got all this addiction stuff, and she's like, what?
Yeah.
Why are
This
why
is
do
not
you
what
ma-"
I signed
and
up
and
for.
it's not because you're looking at porn, it's because you're lying.
Yeah.
And so that's the
Yes.
biggest issue, right? And so
Yes.
that's why, when you get to the point where you're like, you know what, I could see myself like dating this chick and being around her and being like, you know what, I could totally date her. Now would probably be a good time to do it. But I would also suggest go to God with that and be like, God, show me, like, when do I need to disclose what's going on?
Yeah.
And you sit him down and be like, hey, I need to tell you something.
So
Agree.
here's another.
But let's have him say, why do you
Yeah. What do
disagree?
you think, Liam?
Why do I?
Why do
Yeah,
you
so
disagree?
I agree. I agree
I know
with
you
what
agree
you
with me,
said.
but disagreed with what that.
Yeah.
what guy
Well, I disagree with waiting that long, waiting
Yeah.
until what your friend said, till almost engagement, because we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the double life. I mean, you are living a double
Totally.
life, and you are hiding that from your partner. In the scriptures, we learn that we're supposed to, man will cleave unto his wife and they'll be one flesh. You can't be one flesh with someone that you're hiding like a significant skeleton in the closet.
Totally.
And because it's not just your problem, it affects them. And you need to be open and honest about that. And some people aren't comfortable with it, and some people are, and you have to let them make the choice. They have free will. And I've seen that in my life, where there was a time, actually not too long ago, within the last year, where I got to the point where we both really liked each other. We were going to start dating exclusively. And she asked me some like pretty pointed questions, and I thought, well, this is as good of time as ever to bring this up. So I brought it up to her. And I always do that. I try to paint an optimistic but realistic picture about what's going on in my life about this. And she took a day to think about it, and she said, I think you're great, but I'm not comfortable being with someone who has this problem.
Wow.
And that was the first time that was the response that I'd gotten. Most people are like, well, like, we'll work through it and like blah, 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 blah. She was like, nope, won't do it.
And that's a choice that she can make
Yep.
right now. And
And-
I think she's going to have to make that choice over and over and over and over again.
And I told her, I was like, I genuinely wish you the best of luck, because I don't think you really understand the statistics on this.
Right.
But I respect your decision, and that's okay.
So here's the thought for you guys. This is something I've been through, and I think it would be helpful for us to, I don't know, to maybe pull out the shame out of this conversation. It can be a really difficult thing to ask on dates and date consistently when you're struggling, especially when you're struggling badly with pornography. or any type of sexual acting out. And so I actually recently in the last couple months got to a point where I genuinely feel like any girl, it's funny, I really do feel like any girl would be really lucky to like to be in a relationship with me because
you're dope.
yeah, I think I'm awesome. But I went through a long phase where I was like, dude, I suck. Like I'm just gonna disappoint any girl that is in a relationship with me, and
we're gonna disappoint the girls whether we're in an addiction or not.
Yeah, but I didn't know how to handle that because I was like,
Right.
I'm just gonna hurt her. I think it may have come from seeing my mom, like the look in her eye, following her finding out about my dad's addiction.
Well, it's a shame that it's attached to your identity.
I think there's something there. But how do you navigate that when you get stuck in a spot and you don't want to date because you think that you're worthless, or you think that no person would ever, you'd never be able to be a worthy partner if you're struggling in addiction? What do you guys think on that one? It's been something I've thought about at length.
Why does she determine your worth? Like we had a somebody on our podcast, the the Joe and Amy podcast, and Amy brought up this amazing quote that we talk about all the time, and it says, "Your worth is already set. Everything else is just an experience." So your worth is already set. Now she may have the girl that you want to date may have some guidelines of like, I really don't want this in my marriage. I don't want this in my dating scene. And she can make that choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there are some girls that are like, you know what? I see you for who you are. Thank you for being honest and sharing your heart with me. And you know what? I got my own stuff. And it's not just saying I have my own addiction. It's saying I have my own stuff. And there's things that we all struggle with. I don't care who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We all struggle with something. And for her to finally be like, you know what, Sam, I know you and I know your heart, and I love hanging out with you. And I'd like to get to know you more because I want to get to know Sam, not the addiction. She may not like the behavior, but she can absolutely love and fall in love with Sam and who he is.
So she's free to set limits on that and whatever that looks like for her. But you're saying, as far as worth goes, like she's choosing you and not the addiction.
Right.
Okay.
Because like my wife even said, she goes, Chris, I can only be with you if you promise that you can stay in recovery for the rest of your life.
So that is a boundary you guys have.
She didn't say sober for the rest of your life.
Okay.
She said stay in recovery for the rest of your life.
Interesting.
I want you to be in recovery. And I'm like, done. I can totally do that. And it's not like, oh, it's free for me to go and act out. It is like, no, I need to figure out what recovery really means to me and live my life that way.
Wow.
I love that.
What do you think, Liam?
Yeah, that's awesome. I had an experience where a girl once asked me how, after we had talked about this issue, about an issue of pornography, she asked me, she's like, well, do you think you're in a place where that would never be a problem again? And I told her honestly, I said, no. Why?
Way to be honest, dude.
Yeah.
That's sick.
And I told her no, because it's like you said, can I promise that I'm never going to act out again? No. Can I promise that I'm always going to be in recovery?
And then
Yes, I
and
can.
Then I can promise that I'm not going to lie about it too.
Exactly.
I'm honest about it. Totally.
Yeah, you can promise that. That's
You can absolutely promise that. And when you make that promise to yourself, that's valuable.
Well, I'm just curious. I want to get feedback from the audience. Guys, email us, Chris and Sam at unashamedunafraid.com. We want to know, what are the shame scripts that are entering into your dating life, and what do you need to do to get away from those? I'll just speak in the eye. I think my next step in dating unashamed, I think I need to get to a place where, sure, I'm at a place where I'm dating again, but it's been a lifelong battle for me in trying to, it's the validation thing, trying to go to her for validation and seeking the validation and needing her to be good enough for me and for me to not
Validate
disappoint
your
her.
worthiness.
Yeah.
Mm.
So there's still some things, even though I'm dating again, that I need to go clean up and figure out. There's something that's come up with my sponsor recently. So speaking in the eye, I think that's what I need to do. Is it anything that's coming up for you guys as I say that?
I would just say I would invite everybody. Like everybody's got their own story on how they see the dating scene and when they disclose, but God is going to be the biggest advocate for you and guiding you on when to disclose that. And if you invite God into that world with you, listen to him, because he'll guide you when you are meeting with somebody and you're out dating and you're like, you know what, this feels right for me to be able to share this.
Yeah.
And whether she stays with you or not, that's not the point. It's for you to be able to be like, God, I'm listening and I'll follow you.
Love that.
Absolutely.
What are you gonna say, Liam?
Last thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said, Chris. You know, your worth is set, and you don't need to look for validation in any other place but in our Heavenly Father and our brother, Jesus Christ. And when you do go out and date, make it an external, not an internal experience. Don't go out to date because you're looking for validation or you're looking for a feeling of love, which, you know, is what will come eventually, but you need to know that you are loved already and that you are simply trying to follow God's will, you know, follow his will, and you will build a truly healthy and sound relationship.
Is that your commitment to do that in your own life?
Absolutely.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
I really want to do that.
Okay. Guys, thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review so we can get this to more people. And if there's any doubt at all right now in your mind whether or not you want to become an outsider, just do it. Even just a couple bucks a month is awesome, because we thrive off those donations and we can get this out to more people and do what we do better. And lastly, if you would like to follow us on social media, we are on social media at Unashamed, Unafraid. And until next time, continue to live unashamed.